here we go. I'm also going to introduce, we have a variety of speakers who are going to lead this conversation or contribute parts of this conversation. So I'm going to introduce the folks who will be presenting here today, and actually just then say a quick few words about the cookbooks and kind of how they've proven useful in the last year and a half or so. Okay, but I will start by introducing the cookbook authors, so the folks who have contributed recipes to the cookbook. So the cookbook authors who are presenting today, I'll start with Maria Whitaker, who is the head of digital media software development at Indiana University, as well as Dawn Childress, librarian for digital collections and scholarship at UCLA, and a IIIF editor. Actually, Maria and Dawn are both editors of the specification, as well as contributors to the cookbook. And other authors joining them include Dhananjay Witana, front-end developer at Indiana University, Trip Kirkpatrick, technical lead of special collections at Yale University Library, and Bryan Haberberger, full-stack developer at St. Louis University, and also a IIIF MAPS TSG co-chair. So those are some of the cookbook authors you'll meet and hear from. And we also have two other guest speakers talking about their work implementing and working with the cookbooks. And we have on that front, Kevin Clark, digital library software developer at UCLA, as well as my colleague at the IIIF consortium staff, Glen Robson, who is the IIIF technical coordinator. So lots of good folks to hear from and listen to. The last thing I will say, just to introduce the session, is to say that the cookbooks is something that I'm really proud of that has come out of the IIIF community. And I say that having had very little direct, I mean, I haven't authored cookbook recipes, these folks have. But the effect of them has been very obvious to me. So they've been incredibly obvious or incredibly useful for things like our IIIF training, but also for just getting people quick answers to common use cases. They've been incredibly useful serving as a reference point for for capabilities that can be done with IIIF that may not be as obvious to everyone. And also maybe, I don't know if this is the most important one, but it's a really useful one for vetting the specifications and making sure they're clear where they need to be clear, and kind of testing the use cases and specifics of them against the text and the specifications and things like that. So we'll keep saying it. I'm very grateful to these folks and others who've worked on the cookbook recipes. They've been an invaluable resource. They've got a lot of momentum, which is another thing that's quite exciting. I think there's already 30 recipes. We're looking to work on a bunch more. So I think this session will be really useful in terms of introducing the process, the mechanism, the utility, and hopefully, if that's of interest, and if you found the recipes useful, I hope you will consider contributing to a recipe. I think these folks would be happy to help get you connected to the process of making that work. But I'm going to leave it there. That's enough from me. I will hand it over. I actually don't know who's starting out with the facilitation process first, but whoever it is, take it away.
I think that'll be me. I'll just kind of jump right into it here. Give me 1 second. Screen. Oh, and then I should probably also share my screen. Yes, that's a good thing. Okay, I am hoping you see IIIF Cookbook and Open Conversation. Got it? All right, thank you. Well, hello everybody, and thank you, Josh, for that wonderful intro. You kind of made my life a little bit easier here. I'll skip anything I had in mind because I will not outdo you. So what I'm here to talk about to get things going is sort of what the cookbook is, how you get to it, how you might navigate it, how you might get through a recipe. So let's jump into it. The cookbook is a web page. So instead of going through it here, I'll actually jump to the real thing. It's at IIIF.io API Cookbook. It gives you a little intro about the presentation API and telling you how to connect with recipes and different information about the cookbook, like the process. And of course, then underneath it lists all the recipes. Something fun to know here is that it sort of goes from simple to complex. So you'll notice the first 3 simple ones are you have this one content resource and you want to make a manifest around it. And if we scroll down just to show you that we do have a lot, you'll get to really complex situations like what do we do when you have a table of contents for multiple AV files on multiple canvases, or even something that's a really complicated structure like multi-volume work with individually bound volumes, which I'll dive into later. The ones that are linked because someone wrote a recipe for them, so we have it. And the ones that are not linked means somebody submitted an issue for it, or at least thought it was a good enough idea to get it on this list, but it hasn't been taken on yet. Jump back. Oh, yep. So like I said, best place to start is that landing page to start to jump around. And here you see, again, where I scrolled through the overarching topics. I will say it's best to pick something you already have in mind. So hopefully you're not coming here for an idea already. You might have kind of an idea and you're just looking for guidance on how you might start or might get through it. That's at least mostly how I've used it. So it's a little subjective, I suppose. So how do you navigate a recipe? I'll actually look through a few recipes, an easy one, an average one, and a hard one to go through this a little more. But the general structure is there's a use case up top, which most people read and know right away, yes, this will be useful to me, or no, it won't. And then a lot of uses we see is people just jump straight down to the manifest to see how it was implemented, because we do this, that's implementations of the presentation API. But in between, you'll find implementation notes, which are like research around the idea and some of the things you might run into when you research it yourself. And we even have a restrictions section if there's just something that's outright not possible to do with that particular use case. Things like linked data, term clashing, or just the inability to have a viewer represent it the way you expect. Those kinds of things will all end up there. So let's go into it. I'm going to start with one of those really simple recipes. When I get it right. So like I said, at the top, it's a use case. This is the simplest viable manifest for image content. So reading that right away, you would know, okay, I'm a beginner. Maybe if I'm just trying to learn, I'm not even ready to look at a manifest yet, like just what has to go into it. You'll see here the implementation notes that what you see is mandatory structure. It gives you a little bit of information about JSON LD, these are the basics you kind of need to know about getting into IIIF. Everything's linked open data compatible and follows certain patterns to get that done. It tells you that a manifest will have items. That's how you put content into it. So here you've learned about a manifest, you've learned about a canvas, and you've learned about putting content onto a canvas. And that's sort of your minimum information to get started. So a restriction here, which is noted already on a very simple one like this, is that there are more optimal ways of including content. And in this one, we chose the simplest way. So you're not necessarily getting those really good deep zooming features because the image is just sort of very plain and simple. So here, then you come down, you jump down to your manifest and shouldn't be intimidated by this one. It's pretty simple. And then you can even go and see what that might look like in a viewer. So I'm going to click this button live and see what happens. So here we go. Like I said, not a very impressive image. There's not a whole lot you can do with it. But you see how you would expect it to open up in a viewer where you would expect to see your labels, those kinds of things. So that's a good example of a simple one. So let's look at something that goes up another level. And I'm not doing this to read recipes at you, but more or less to some of the cues and things to look for and to call out when you're coming into them to know if it's going to be useful for you quickly or not. So in this one here, you'll see right away, we get to learn about another resource type, ranges. Ranges are used to implement structure. Why might you want to implement structure? Well, think about logical structure of your real world objects. Just a book. There's a cover and a back and a table of contents and page by page viewing. So this use case is how do I represent that through IIIF? So here, just like I said, you come in and learn about a range. That's what you got to do a structure. What ranges can contain, and if you kind of have a data structure in mind, you'd understand if a range can contain a range, that's really how you can structure stuff. Structures, they have a label, often represent table of contents. A little bit, and this comes up in many, many recipes, is a behavior property for IIIF resource types. There'll be things like page view or left to right, that might be wrong, but things like that that tell you this is how we expect the the object to work in a viewer. So if it's paged view, I'd expect I have something like go to the next page, go to the previous page, and that would work. Restrictions on this one, a fun one that there are none, and that's very nice, so we don't have to worry about it. The example here goes into, so like we'll actually drive you into a real world example. So this one actually explains an Ethiopic manuscript, which contains multiple works and multiple sections. We'll come in and we'll see, what are the important things to see. The person who wrote the example did a really good job of sticking just a simple example above the manifest. So if you don't even want to look at it, you at least know what you hope to see in a viewer, something like that. We don't need to go over this, most of this stuff. But since this one does have something very specific to call out, specifically the structures, sorry for all the scrolling, it's highlighted. So here, for people who do jump straight down to the manifest, this is something we do a lot, just to draw your eye right to what's the new bit in here, what's the specific bit you need to learn. So here you'll see the ranges put together. There's a top range with internal ranges with internal canvases that represent labels in multiple languages, which is another trick this recipe wasn't exactly trying to draw your eye to, but it's something fun to learn along the way. So here's, example with English on Monday. I think that's enough for that one. So you could probably anticipate when I get you to a difficult one, there's even more to learn and more to know about. So along the way here, no matter what level of user or some other term I've heard that I've liked, persona, you sort of are, you know your entry level. It's almost easy to tell just by reading the use case and knowing what resource types you're going to work with. So this one is and this one escapes me a little bit. I believe Dawn wrote it, and I'm sorry if I misrepresent it. It's a good one. It's just complicated. It's a multi-volume work, and it's often desirable to group those volumes together. So something here you notice right away is that you are going to have to learn about a collection. So that's sort of like the top resource type that lets you aggregate manifests in various ways. And so you can imagine when you're trying to represent volumes of works, which are collections of manuscripts, whose collections may overall be represented by an encapsulating collection, there's different ways you might hope that would view in a viewer. So this sort of goes through what parts to use in like those behavior things. So this one's multi-part instead of paged, which makes a big difference for the viewer to know about how to go around in it. And it also gets into, and this we tried to decide of, does it belong in the recipe? Does it belong as its own recipe? Is there a meta recipe to help with this? But alternative approaches, because there's more than one way to structure data. You saw ranges already. So you've got manifests that collect canvases, ranges that collect manifests, ranges and canvases, and collections that collect manifests. A little note on metadata. We're just going to skip right on through it. So here's a good restriction. It lets you know that, yes, you have a freedom in the ways in which you can structuralize and collect things, but it's important to know a manifest must not be embedded in a collection. So if you have a collection, your manifest is just in there as a label, and then it's referenced URI. That's sort of a restriction to know about, because in a lot of these other scenarios, we directly embed those resources. The example sort of tells you again, we're going to look at a Japanese book in 2 volumes. There's going to be a collection. We're going to use multi-part because of the way we want it to look. And this is the real fun complication bit of it. I'm just going to scroll fast. So see your collection, your multi-part, that's something Dom really wanted to call out. But as we keep going, since it's a collection, we had to first make a couple manifests, right? Because you're going to collect them in a collection. So we did the collection up top, and then we did the manifests below with all the content in them. Again, I'm just going to fly through it. So you can see how complex it got right there, right? So now I had to look at 2 manifests and a collection and learn about the aggregation of canvases and how you might aggregate those. But if this was a use case you're interested in, you probably knew enough about the background to follow this through. See, I know about the technical stuff, not the background reason why you did this. So like this would be a difficult one for me to come across and try to read. Oh, doing good. Okay. I think that's what I have for you. Yes, that's what I have for you. So thanks for listening, and I hope you have become a little more comfortable with the cookbook.
Hello, I'm just, my part in this is very easy. I'm just going to introduce the few people who are going to show us the benefits of recipes. In general, of course, we have seen what a recipe is, but it can help people figure out exactly how to accomplish something they want to accomplish. But the recipes can also help you to illustrate a point to people who don't know about IIIF. You can just go and show what the possibilities are. It can also be used as a learning tool and a training tool. Glen will talk about how to use the cookbook for training. It can also be used for the examples for unit testing, which Kevin will talk about. And Ananji will also refer to clients and viewers. She will show you how she uses it to help her with the specification of her IIIF player. And then we also have a conversation about using the cookbook for helping with specification, actually, and coming up with more details for certain specifications. So I'll do the hard thing here of keeping everybody under 5 minutes. We'll start with Glen.
Great, thank you. And just before I start, I just want to echo what Josh said at the beginning and say a huge thank you to the cookbook authors, both the authors that are on the call, but also the others that aren't represented, and also the ones that review the recipes. Whenever you see the cookbooks on the live site, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and they're a great group of people to work with. So if you are interested in working with cookbooks, do come along to the meetings that we have. I'm sure we'll mention them later. It's a really good group to work with, and they're very supportive in helping people write recipes. And as Maria said, it's a great way to learn about different aspects of IIIF. But I'll just share my screen now, and I'll talk about one use that we make of them in the training. So hopefully you can see my slide. Yeah, great. So as Josh mentioned, I'm Glen Robson. I'm the IIIF technical coordinator, and my main role in the cookbook process is just to help coordinate the process and make sure the infrastructure is in place. But I also do a lot of training, online workshops. So I'm going to be talking about how I use these recipes in the online workshops to help teach IIIF. The first point to mention is that in the current workshops, we blend teaching version 2 and version 3, and the cookbooks are only for version 3. I wish they were for version 2 sometimes, but at the moment we're doing this blended 2 and 3, but we're going to be moving over to teaching just 3 in the very near future. And that's partly as the tool support's improving, but also we're seeing more people who want to do AV on the training, and that's only available in 3. So for the current training, we asked the students to create a manifest using the Bodleian manifest editor, and this is a kind of a visual way to create a manifest. And then we asked them to open it up and edit it and add a table of contents by searching the presentation specification to find out how it works. And for those that struggle, I let them into a secret that I'm sure all the experienced IIIF people know, that if you're not quite sure how to not sure what it should look like, you scroll to the bottom of the specification and it's got a full example, and you basically copy and paste it and just change the bits you work. And that's really where the cookbook comes from, because we kind of formalized that and just made that a bit easier. So rather than having to search the whole specification for an example, you can find all of them listed here by feature. So when we cover the presentation in API, I also cover version 3, and I take them through this list of recipes, and particularly the first 3, but 2, the basic audio and video examples, as they really show the difference between IIIF version 2 and version 3, and also show how you can put an audio resource into a manifest. And one of the most useful things about the cookbook is the link to the viewer. This means if someone is trying to recreate what they're seeing in the cookbook, they can check which viewer is going to work with the thing they're trying to do. When you first start, it can be really difficult to know if it's something that you've done wrong in the manifest, or if it's the fact that the viewer doesn't support it. So one of the great features of the cookbook is that links to the viewers at the top. And you'll notice in some cookbooks, they don't have that link, and that's because it doesn't work in that viewer. So you instantly know what you should be seeing when you get it right. I've used one of the recipes and the first basic video manifest as part of the training. Somebody was interested in doing a video manifest. And so I've kind of wrapped it in a bit more of a hand-holding guide with some video assets that they can use in the training. And this just gives them a step-by-step instruction. And the first step is to download the video recipe, and then it tells you which bits in the manifest to change to make it work for your video. And it's a really simple process. The hardest part is trying to find the dimensions of the videos, so the duration, but also the width and the height. But we've got some instructions in this page to tell people how to do that. But it's a really useful way of using the recipes for teaching. I think the one I use most is probably the very first one, which shows you how to add an image to a manifest. And this might not seem that useful or complicated, but it's one of the real hidden gems of IIIF, which I wanted to highlight. So this recipe shows you how to add a non-IIIF image to a manifest. So it allows any image on the web to be used in Mirador or the UV. You're not just limited to IIIF images. And this can be really important, particularly to research use cases where maybe you're working with 10 IIIF images, but there's 5 which maybe aren't IIIF. This particular recipe shows how you can add them to a manifest and then start using them as any other IIIF image in Mirador on UV. And then finally, just to show you the one that Bryan showed you, the table of contents book chapter. So when we do move to teaching only 3, then this is the one I'm looking forward to using. It's going to make it much easier for people to be able to follow the recipe rather than look in the specifications. And thankfully, the table of contents is a lot easier in version 3 than version 2. And this recipe gives a really good explanation of how it works. So
Your time is up.
Great. Thank you, Maria. So,
Kevin, talk about using the, yes.
Yes. Share my screen. So I hope you all can see a slide there. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a little bit from the perspective of someone who's writing a software library to work with manifests. So we've been working on a software library to handle version 3 of the IIIF presentation manifest, and we have been using the cookbook recipes as an aid as we develop that library. And so one of the nice things, as Bryan already pointed out, is all the recipes have JSON files, and sometimes they have more than one JSON file, depending on whether it's just a manifest or a collection that goes with the manifest. And all of those JSON files are wonderful test fixtures for when you're writing a library. And test fixtures, just to sort of recognize their importance, help you when you're implementing it the first time. So I did one pass of the library, and then I ran it against some of the cookbook files. I was like, oh no, I didn't quite get that right. I need to go back and change my code to actually handle that correctly. Test fixtures also help in the future. So if I have a bunch of test fixtures that I'm running all these JSON files that I'm running my code against, if I change something in the future with the software library that breaks how it interprets, how it reads those test fixtures or JSON files, then it gives me an alert and lets me know, hey, I've done something wrong that I need to fix this before I move on. So I thought I'd just show a little bit. It's pretty simple to use them. We just have downloaded all the JSON files from the GitHub repository, the Cookbook GitHub repository, and we keep them all associated with our local project. And then we have a big test class called a round trip test class that will then read in each of those JSON files and construct a manifest from that JSON file, or in the case of where the JSON file represents a collection, construct a collection from that JSON input. And then we basically just write that back out to a JSON object again. So we're round tripping it, we're taking it in as JSON and then writing it out as JSON. And so we can then compare those two things. And so we can see whether what we took in is what we put out. And sometimes we may get an error or an exception if something didn't mesh between those two, or sometimes something may be missing from what's output versus what comes in. So having these tests that run across these JSON files really help us sort of make sure that the library is doing what we think it should be doing and what it's supposed to be doing by handling all these examples or cases that are represented in the cookbook recipes. And currently we do, you can see that compare method there. We do a comparison between the two. We do that both as JSON objects and as strings, because the JSON strings give us a better difference between the two if there are differences, whereas the JSON objects won't necessarily care about order. And that's one of the things that we're interested in when we process our files as well. That we're outputting things so that the files look just the same as the way we took them in. One of the things, in addition to using just using them internally as a tool for how to just sort of check our code and make sure that we're conformant with the spec, is we also sort of publish on our documentation sort of the status of how the library handles each of those test cases for each of those cookbook recipes. So you can see here, there's a list of recipes on the left, and then the status of whether our library can round trip that recipe successfully or not. And as the recipes are being added to over time, we will continue to add to the tests as well. And you can see sometimes, so some of the more complicated ones, we have a geolocate that has some GeoJSON in the annotation body, and our library handles that, but it handles it by just wrapping it in a JSON object rather than having specific classes within our object model to deal with it. But we want to be able to support someone who wants to be able to use it. So we have a check there, but we have a caveat explaining this is we've handled it, but this is the way that we've handled it. So it's sort of communicating out to users of our library who might be interested in how it handles certain aspects of the spec. And one of the last sort of thing I wanted to make a point about is using this to sort of document how our library should be used. The recipes document how people should use the spec, but we're also using them to document, how you can use our libraries to create the type of JSON that you see in the recipes. So here we're started a very beginning Git book with examples of the recipes, and so down in the little blue box here you can see the Java code, and this is how you would use our library to construct a manifest that matches the 001 recipe within the cookbook. So that sort of, in addition to sort of being an internal check within our software project, it is also communicating out to potential users of, here's how you use it, and using the documentation. And like others, I want to thank all the cookbook editors. The recipes have been extremely useful and have increased my knowledge of the spec, in addition to just being a great tool to check the code that we're writing to make sure that it's conformant. Well, that's it.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up is Dhananjay. She will talk about how she sees using the cookbook to help her with the development of her viewer.
Thank you, Maria. Let me share my screen first. Okay. I hope you can see my screen. Hi, everyone. As previously said, I'm Dhananjay. I'm a front-end developer with the Avalon Media System at Indiana University. First of all, what is Avalon? It's a system that provides access to large collections of AV resources. This is an open source project written using Ruby on Rails, and we have a couple of React.js components using in the UI. And within Avalon, we are generating IIIF manifests for the resources, and we want to use these manifests in Avalon's player, which we are currently not doing. So for this purpose, we started developing this IIIF media player, and we're hoping to integrate it into Avalon, replacing our existing player. So to talk a little bit more about this, this is being developed as a React.js component library, which is then packaged into an NPM package, which can be used very easily in other applications. And right now we have two distinct components, the player itself and the structured navigation component. This is using a IIIF 3.0 presentation manifest to build these components. The reason for developing this as a component library is to provide more flexibility when someone is using this. So for an example, if you just want to use the player without the structured navigation, you can just import that into your application and use it. And if you want both of these, making it independent components, we have enabled the host application to use them in different layouts as they prefer, and with customizable CSS and stuff. So that's why we are developing this as a component library. And going forward, our next step is to develop a transcript component. And we are in the process of developing this. And we have been discussing how to structure the transcript data and specifically how IIIF manifests are going to present this data so that they can be parsed and how the data can be used to build the component. And our concerns were answered in this meta recipe for transcripts, captions, and subtitles. This talks about how one would build the manifest based on the user experience they want to provide in their client. For an example, let's say we have a set of transcript data that have time information, and we want to provide synchronization of the transcript data with the playback in the player. And how can I present that data in the manifest? So in here, on the transcripts, the scenario 3 presents a solution for this. It says that you can provide these transcript fragments as IIIF annotations for it to be presented in the manifest. So likewise, we were able to map our expected user experience with this transcript component that we're building into these scenarios and build the manifest accordingly and write the process in the development process. So thank you. This is what we've been using this in our development process. The cookbook recipes. Thank you, everyone. This is it.
Thank you, Dhananjay. And next is Don to talk about using the cookbook to help create specs. And after Don, I will let Trip pick up.
Oh, actually, I'll be going over the workflows after this, and then it will be time for the discussion.
All right, so you're doing the workflow. All right.
I'm going to share my screen. And hope I do this right with Zoom. I assume everyone can see. Okay, great. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about a slightly different sort of use of the cookbook. I mean, I think for the most part, the recipes are there to really demonstrate, the spec, what has already been standardized. But we're also finding cases where we're kind of thinking about maybe establishing community norms. And in one of those areas, it was a thumbnail optimization, right? So we're creating an implementation note. It's not quite a recipe. It's more of an implementation note in the cookbook, and it really discusses the best approach for Canvas thumbnails. Those are not required by the spec. There's not a lot of information about it. But one of the things that we encountered at UCLA was really thinking about how do we optimize thumbnail generation? And that's a conversation that really needs to happen with the developers of clients and across viewers and across the community. So we thought this was a really good opportunity to kind of think about establishing some community norms, test those out for a while. And so, this implementation note is meant to guide both the content publishers or manifest creators, but also the client developers. And it does require a lot of discussion, a lot of community buy-in, so that we're all on the same page about this, which, when it's not, we don't have the spec underlying it, it's a little bit more difficult to, I think, come up with that, buy-in from everyone. So we're kind of creating a pre-spec in a way. And with thumbnail optimization, the discussions that we've had already, that implementation note or recipe is still in progress. It's something that we're working on and discussing. We've had conversations with the Mirador 3 folks. We're going to be having conversations with the Universal Viewer folks and also with within the IIIF editors. And so that is a work in progress, but we have made some progress already. And these discussions have already led to some updates in Mirador 3. So a shout out to Mark Matney for working on the thumbnail selection algorithm for canvases and pushing those changes to Mirador 3. And we've even already had some institution, well, at least one, I say a few, maybe it was only one, I don't know, but have already commented on the increased thumbnail load speed. And so that's something we're also going to be implementing at UCLA. I hope multiple institutions have noticed it. But the other thing that could come out of this is that, establishing these norms and once we, sort of have some implementations that we can, look to and maybe fine tune, perhaps this is something that would show up in a future version of the specifications. So we're kind of seeing this as an incubator for testing out new norms, for seeing, some places where we can come together as a community and make suggestions for the spec overall. I think that's it. So with that, should I just go ahead and move on to the workflows?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about creating a new recipe and the workflow that goes into that. So we really encourage, like others have said, encourage anyone with a recipe idea to join the cookbook authors, or if you just want to work on maybe some of the existing recipe issues. When I started working on the cookbook recipes, I didn't have a particular recipe in mind, but writing the recipes was a really great way to take a deeper dive into the spec and learn a lot more about IIIF. So I've learned a lot along the way. So it was a really great exercise, great experience. But just to help demystify that process a little bit for anyone who might be interested, I'm just going to give an overview of this process from ideation to publication. I'm going to skip over a lot of detail, but I just want to point out we also have this IIIF cookbook process, which does have some of those, details in there. So this is going to be more of an overview. So in the first stage, the ideation. You might have an idea. Hopefully the first thing you've done is reviewed all the existing issues. So, we've seen on the cookbook homepage, we have all these published ones. The ones that are in gray there have not been either worked on yet, or maybe they're being worked on, but they haven't been published. So in order to know if an issue is already being worked on, you would need to check the pull requests and also the issues. So I think reviewing those first is a really good first step. And if your use case isn't represented there, or maybe it is, but you think that it could be represented a little bit better or needs some slight tweaking, then you can go ahead and either contribute to the conversation in those issues or the pull requests, or you can go ahead and suggest a new recipe. And there are two ways to get that conversation started. You could propose a recipe to the cookbook channel in the IIIF Slack, and the community could discuss it, but you could also just create an issue on GitHub. We do have a nice issue template that kind of guides you through all the information that you need to create a new issue, questions you have to answer, description of the use case, those kinds of things. And then once your recipe is out there, the community just discusses it, helps to scope the recipe before any work begins, and so on. So once an issue has been created and it's kind of been established what the use case is and the scope, then we move on to the drafting stage. Now, you can propose an issue or recipe, but doesn't mean you have to work on it. You can leave it for the cookbook authors, or you can take it on yourself. So if you do want to work on it yourself and you haven't authored one yet, the first thing you need to do is contact Glen and just ask for permissions to that repository so you can assign an issue to yourself. It's no, big process. It's just a simple ask and you receive. So once it's been assigned, the first steps are to clone the repository so you have your own copy of it, and you want to create a new branch just for that recipe. So we keep each recipe in its own branch, to work on, sort of separately. And then when everything's done, it all gets merged together. So once you create your new branch, you also need to create a recipe folder. So each recipe has its own folder within the recipes folder within the repository. And inside, that recipe folder, well, we actually have a template recipe folder, and inside there are two required files. So we have the index.md, the index.md file, and we also have a manifest.json file in there. And so those have all the components that you need, to make the recipes work, and so that you'll have a successful build when you push those. And so you'll want to make some initial edits to those, making sure to retain that structure of the header, and the YAML and the different recipe sections, and also the includes that are needed for like linking to viewers and so on. And once that's ready, you want to push your branch up to the repository, and you want to create a new draft pull request. So when you do that, then what that does is it initializes a preview build. Then you want to get that link to that preview build, and you want to make sure you go in and add those to the issue and to the PR. So it's really easy for people to go in and review those and see that they're under construction. And so once you've done that and get that kind of set up, then you would just start diving into writing your recipe. It's a very iterative process. We do a lot of drafting, and then pushing, and then sharing and talking about the recipe in the cookbook authors meeting, which is weekly, usually on Fridays, but not always. And so, so it goes through a lot of review, internal review, and I'll probably might push something 10 to 20 times, right, with all the different revisions. And so that takes a little while. And then once we all kind of feel that everything's ready to go, or the author feels like it's ready to go based on the feedback, then it goes to the review stage. And there's actually a couple of different review stages. So we have that internal review during the drafting, but then we also have a group of cookbook editors. And what this is really just a group of volunteers from the TRC that get together to do sort of a pre-review. They'll offer feedback, and sometimes we need to make revisions before we push it to the TRC, but sometimes it's just ready to go. And then from that point, the draft PR that you've created before is turned into a full pull request that's ready for review. And then a new ticket is created by Glen for review by the TRC. There's a TRC meeting, where the author presents their recipe, goes through, kind of walks through it, and then the voting happens for about 2 weeks. TRC votes on it. I think it needs at least a two-thirds majority in order to pass, but it can pass, but still needs some edits. So there's some discussion that happens in the comments there. But sometimes they don't really quite, hit the mark, right? And so they might require some major revisions. And so of course, then we go back to that drafting stage where we're writing, pushing up changes and discussing with the authors again, and then it can go back to TRC. Of course, if everything is approved, either as is or with small changes, then the sort of final stage is publishing, which is really very easy for all of us, except for Glen, maybe. It is, yes, publish. We just kind of have Glen merges it into the main branch. So that's pretty much the sort of high level view of the workflow of getting a recipe done. Glen says he only clicks a button, so it's easy for everyone. It's wonderful. I think that's pretty much it, unless did I miss anything significant? Feel free to chime in, my fellow cookbook authors. Great. So, I guess basically just to kind of demystify all this, we hope others will get involved, and maybe by showing this process a little bit, you'll see that it's quite easy. There's a lot of support, and sometimes recipes take a while. You're not expected to, do something in a week, right? These take a little while. There are some that I do really quickly. There are some that I have been working on for months, and I'm sure Glen would like me to submit them to TRC, but here we are. So with that, I will turn it over to Trip to lead us in some discussion. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Dawn, and thank you to my fellow frequent authors. It's at least my way of denoting those of us who are regularly on the calls, but yes, there are, as Josh mentioned, and Glen, there are others who have been part of it in and out. And so I'll use my small soapbox to just say that, for one thing, that as Dawn mentioned, if you propose a recipe, you don't have to be the one who writes it. If you write one recipe, you don't have to write any others ever again. Really, please join us for what you're able to. And my second gloss would only be that as somebody who was new, I found the process to not always be straightforward, but it isn't terribly difficult. We have many steps, and we do a lot of this, but it is not no particular step is challenging. You get a lot of support. I mean, I came into this not knowing hardly squat about the IIIF presentation spec, and here I am presenting at the conference about the cookbook. So you too can be a model or just look like one. So I'll open it up here. There's no screen for me to share because my slide says discussion on it, and I'd much rather see the names and sometimes faces of the people here. So any questions, you can put them into the chat in Whova. Some of us will monitor that. I've got a couple polls in there that are just ways of sort of thinking about how to maybe have a question or ways that might be entry points for you into a recipe. And I will mention, I did pull out from the lightning talk yesterday morning. I'll actually do the Q and the A again as a way of maybe thinking about this some. And so Matthias asked it whether it was a valid comparison to think about the cookbook as a pattern language and the recipes as the patterns, and Glen affirmed that that's a fair way to look at it. So again, if that's something that sort of stirs your brain to think about things to ask here, please, there is no bad question.
I will say, sort of while people type up their questions, that this was my sort of first time getting in the cookbook too. Over about the last year and a half, it's been with all the map stuff. And it is a lot of steps when you see it, but you know, me, I'm a developer, so my experience of doing it was like each one of those steps is taken care of by one line in my command line. You know, I just pull it down, make the branch, get it started, get it up, have my preview. That's day one, and it took 30 minutes. It flows once you get moving. We just try to let you know, yes, there are technical steps. People who are very good at, you know, writing social media and publications aren't always very good at like doing the manifest part. And that's what we're all around for. That's what the whole process is for. It's to help you with every piece of it.
Thank you. Looking around, it occurs to me that also not everybody is over in the Whova. So let me throw out the questions that I did put in there. Was just thinking about what IIIF work you're doing that might be able to be featured as a recipe, or if you're at an institution, what does your institution collect that might highlight features of the specs that could be used in a recipe?
It's not really a question, but a comment that it's something that I asked. So now it's no longer a question because I have already asked this. The cookbook page, when it describes what the cookbook is, talks about presentation API. But there has been other conversations about why can I not have a recipe for search? I'm one of the co-chairs for the content search API, and we're thinking we would like recipes there too. So the cookbook is getting expanded in people's imagination to actually accommodate recipes for other APIs, for the search API, for discovery, for I don't know how, if there are 3D cases, we don't have a 3D API, but if there are cases that can already be represented, we could do with the image API what's possible. And so we are, it started as here, presentation API, here's how you use it, but it's now considered opened to other APIs as well.
Great, thank you. We did get a question there in the chat from Ben Bacalar asking, would it make sense to have a link to a manifest editor builder or builder such as BME? And I'll open that up to my fellow authors to see who feels good about answering that.
Maybe I'll have a crack at that one if that's okay. So I assume BME is the body and manifest editor is my guess of the acronym. So we haven't really structured the cookbook like that as like a practical, here's the tool you use to create the manifest. we're kind of aiming the cookbook as this is an example of a manifest which you then take and do things with. We do have other types of things like the IIIF training, which I mentioned, which will take you through the body and manifest editor and show you the different tools that you can use to create manifests. But we kind of try and keep that separate to the recipes, which just kind of supposed to be kind of very specific about the example manifest and a background. So yeah, as you said, it's not really about learning how to be a manifest, although I mean, most people, as I said, just copy a working example and make a couple of changes. And that's the kind of workflow we're going. But the kind of hands-on approach, I think, is probably more of a training thing rather than a cookbook.
Great, thanks, Ben. And again, to report out from the Whova chat, if you're not there, a comment that we might have the cookbook calls at a different time other than noonish Eastern time, which works very well for me, on Fridays, because that's after most people's working hours in points farther east than the East Coast of the United States. Very good point.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I made the point that we don't actually have a set schedule. Each week when we meet, we just kind of set a time for the next one. So whoever's there really decides, what the meeting time will be the next week, the following week. But, if someone were just to say, hey, I want to join the cookbook meetings, that time doesn't work for me. We'd be happy to restructure that and come up with other times. We do sometimes deviate from Friday, but it's still usually around that noon Eastern time. But we could go earlier.
And even if you don't want to come to the meeting, just making yourself heard on the Slack might get you somewhere.
Absolutely.
And Ben asks where the cookbook is linked from on the IIIF website.
Yes,
I
believe it's in the technical details, at least. I'm not familiar enough with the website to know everywhere it's linked from, but actually in the first body paragraph of IIIF.io/technical-details, or just the technical details menu item at the top, it links out to the cookbook. And that is the cookbook as is fully merged and approved and everything. At some point in the chat, I linked to and you can find it there or by going to github.com/IIIF and getting into cookbook recipes and thereafter. In the issues are in there, that is the recipes under consideration. The recipes that are in process are in the pull requests section of that repository. And each of those, because they are on their own branch, as was mentioned before, each of those is going to have its own preview space. So you can't, URL hack your way to an in-process recipe. You'll have to go to find the pull request to see those.
Trip, there's a question on the Whova.
Great. I hadn't gotten back to that. Thank you. Is that the question about linking the cookbook, or where am I?
Localization and languages.
Oh, yes, great. I was only looking in the chat. Thank you very much. Cookbook editions in other languages. Any plans for localization and internationalization working group? This has come up from time to time in the cookbook group. And frankly, each time we see it, we have been seeing it, unfortunately, as a large monster with huge, sharp, pointy teeth, and have steered away from it very quickly. But you're absolutely right. As an international specification, this should be on the roadmap in some way. Actually, that's a good point. And I certainly didn't contemplate it coming into this presentation, but another way of getting involved with the cookbook would be to find a recipe that is important to you and propose a translation for it. That would be incredibly useful. It's not, Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not specifically on the roadmap for the cookbook right now. But if somebody were to volunteer to translate one or more, we'd find a way. We'd find a way to make that work.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic question, and it would be a great thing to see the recipes translated. As Chuck mentions, we haven't currently got any that are translated, although we do show how to show different languages in the manifest. The website itself and the recipes aren't translated, but we'd definitely love to see that if people are interested in helping us.
Yeah, and sort of an answer from a technical view that I'll give that is that started happening in Mirador because there were so many users of Mirador that needed the buttons to be in the language for their institution or just their country in general. So it was really, so I'm flipping this back on you, the audience. It was really the people using it that pushed for that. So if we had international users, I think you would, or authors, I think you would see that happen quickly.
And I think we'd be so keen to see that happen, we'd facilitate that. So even if it was just translation in a Microsoft Word document, we could do the GitHub work to get it in. It'd be great to be able to support that.
Embarrassingly, Huva is not letting me see the answers to the polls, even though there's a response to each of the poll items. So if any of my fellow presenters can see the responses, that would be helpful.
I was the one that responded.
Oh, good.
I said annotations. We collect a lot of annotations, and that is something that me personally, I find disappointing that there's not a whole lot of annotation recipes in there. It's something I have my eye on for the future.
Yep, absolutely. One in process right now is on basic tagging as an annotation. Others, of course, have annotations sort of as a matter of course, but exactly not focusing on the annotations qua annotations.
I think Glen have proposed that just as we have a meta recipe for transcripts, which actually there are examples there of how to use annotations for that particular use case, and to have a meta recipe about annotations in general, and that might be useful. So we also would like to hear people's ideas for recipes that would help them in their use cases.
Absolutely. And according to my clock, we're under a minute left. So am I correct? We've only got till 2:30 here. So I guess I'll wrap. I don't think we had anybody else scheduled to wrap. But thanks to fellow presenters and to everybody who showed up here. And please visit us in the Cookbook Slack or propose an issue or any of the things we've talked about so far. So thanks very much and enjoy the rest of the day and the conference.
Bye.
Thanks all.